Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first Venture Lab event of the season, first of the 5. I'm Andrei Gushchin. I am a chair of Venture Lab, and Venture Lab is a branch of MIT Enterprise Forum Northwest.
Good evening, everyone. Both John and Stan have earned their stripes working for large companies as well as for or with smaller companies that are selling to larger companies. So I think their comments and insights this evening draw us on experience gained from receiving as well as giving to and from smaller and larger companies. So with that, I would like to introduce John Roberts.
Great. Thank you, Gar. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for spending a little bit of your evening with Stan and myself. Andre wanted me to start off by sharing some thoughts on the broader environment, and so I'll just take a couple minutes to do that. Ignition has a reasonable purview on that in that we have about 60 companies in various stages across a number of sectors. About 60% of them are in the Northwest, so I think we have a good proxy for what's happening. And I think first and foremost, I'd say it's a hell of a lot better than it was 2 years ago. So things are definitely trending up. I know that we all survived, if you're here, what was really pretty remarkable times. We look at our portfolio and quantify everything we can quantify, how companies are doing against plan, what their rate of growth is, how they're managing cash, et cetera. And so I pulled, a few of those statistics by fund and thinking that it might be interesting. I would say that blended about 90% are on revenue plan, and almost all are on cash plan. So in the instance where you're having a gap, folks are cutting expenses and making the numbers work. So a radically healthier environment. Companies that are selling by sector, in 2008, the enterprise business I've never seen anything fall off as quickly as I saw selling into large enterprises. The pause button became really the stop button. And I would say across sectors, we're seeing a lot of vibrancy, particularly relative to the way it was selling into enterprise. In terms of exits, we're seeing a lot more activity. We've had 4 exits in the last 8 months. All good exits, nothing that's going to return the fund, but very, very good outcomes. And we actually had a company go public last week that was an investment we had made with our China affiliate. And that's trading up. So I don't know. These are just sort of our data points, but we're seeing a general sense of buoyancy. I think across the portfolio, and this just may be my own biased as well, there's a lot of hesitancy. I think there's this, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so we're, counseling our portfolio companies to still have a pretty conservative posture related to expense and growth. It's a good market for taking in B rounds, so we're encouraging people to bulk up on B rounds and C rounds, and just watching sort of the general state of economy, because if there's anything the last 3 years has taught us, nobody's immune to macro shifts. So I could go into more detail, but I'm happy to, just to the extent to which people find it relevant.
So I think there will be a lot of the themes in common with what Jonathan talked about from a venture capitalist point of view that'll be consistent from an entrepreneur's perspective. Maybe I'll have 1 point spread across 10 slides instead of 10 points on one slide, but I'll try to be fairly brief as well. I should say that, like Jonathan, my background is more on the high-tech business software side, so a few of my comments may be a little bit less relevant if it's consumer software, and if it's low-tech, they may or may not apply. So if you're thinking about starting up a donut chain, might not work. On the other hand, if you are, come and see me afterwards, because I'm very passionate about donuts, so love to get in on that. So this is my McKinsey model, even though I didn't work at McKinsey. This is sort of the flow I'm going to talk through today in the deck. And basically, my experience with entrepreneurship, and I'm sure for those of you who have done this as well, is it's all about being in the trenches. You are executing day in and day out, around the clock, not sleeping, working hard to get stuff done, and it's almost impossible to pull back and do strategy. This is sort of the magic happens here slide. It's very difficult to draw. It's very difficult to draw anything prescriptive from only 3 experiences anyway. But it's very tough to be prescriptive on this one because I think it's so unique to every individual company or startup. But I certainly, like John, I've gotten some philosophies and things that I picked up that I thought would be worth mentioning here. I don't think you can overemphasize the importance of having a real solid team of people, really smart, aggressive, great people, and you just got to trust them. And I think it's important that they all work together well. I mean, if anyone follows the NFL, you saw that Randy Moss just got traded from the New England Patriots to the Minnesota Vikings, and Randy Moss is clearly an A player, but he wasn't fitting in the scheme that the New England Patriots need at this point. And that guy, the coach of the New England Patriots, is a master at building an organization that works well together and follows a scheme. And you have to do that as an entrepreneur and someone in a startup too. I think it's really key that you know your culture and you talk about it. The obvious caveat is it doesn't matter what you say your culture is. It is what you do. So you might as well not say anything that's not true because there's no point. Apptio has made it part of our culture to be very frugal, and I think this was a key part of our ability to survive this last few years of strange economic situation. We've raised $37 million or so, and the vast majority of that is still on our balance sheet today. Part of that is due to customer success and our traction and being on the right side of trends and having the right product and that kind of thing. But an equally significant thing is being very frugal. And again, to Jonathan's point, not scaling too early, conserving resources until you know where you're going. Part of entrepreneurship is a huge balancing act between how much you do and how well you do it. And it's just a constant. How do you spend your time day in and day out? I think that more companies fail or come on hard times because they try to do too much than too little. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's sort of my perception. And I think you can often learn more by making mistakes in series than you can in parallel. And what I mean by that is if you're running 10 experiments at once, essentially, and changing 10 parts of your business model simultaneously over 2 years, you get to the end of 2 years, and first of all, it's taken you 2 years, and secondly, you don't know what the heck you just learned because it's so confusing. On the other hand, if you pick one thing and you go down that path and you give it your all and you screw up and you've been frugal and you haven't scaled too early, then you can adjust, learn what you did wrong, and fix it quickly and move on. So I think successful entrepreneurs tend to fail faster and make more mistakes in series than in parallel. I think it's probably been said before that you have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. And I would just say, I think you have to be schizophrenic. I think you have to be simultaneously a scientist, and the role of a scientist is constantly to disprove your own theory. You're looking for evidence that you are wrong. And that's the essence of science and the scientific method. And if you're a good entrepreneur, you are a scientist. However, the other key facet of being an entrepreneur is you've got to be a cheerleader. You've got to be a religious zealot. You've got to have the faith. You've got to know your market's huge. You've got to know your customers want it. You've got to be out there selling it. You've got to convince the VCs. You've got to convince the customers. You've got to convince your employees, your partners, your banker, everyone. And you've got to be constantly out there, and you have to totally believe it. So how can you be both a cheerleader and a scientist at the same time? I think some people can do this, and if you can't do it, if you're more one or the other, then you need to surround yourselves with people who complement you in that regard. I would say one thing about it, though. In my experience, the scientist types know that they need the cheerleaders and will go get them. The cheerleaders don't always know that they need the scientific types. And even if they do, they may not listen to them. Because what happens with the cheerleader types is then when you start bringing up objections or problems or data points that don't support the theory, they say, you're not a team player. So if you're on the cheerleader type, just be careful of that. We need you. You're going to be key to the success of the company, but you also need to make sure you have some balance there. So that's all I had to say. Thanks.